Hi, I'm Jen from Tea Leaves and Tweed, and today I'm going to share another sunrise tea session with you. It's actually a little bit after sunrise today. It's a little bit of a later start in the day, so there's a little bit more noise. Although the birds are still out, the robins have come back this week, so I guess that means spring is officially here. And today I'm going to be tasting a honey oolong from the Beautiful Taiwan Tea Company. This is a high mountain honey oolong that is split roasted, so some of the leaves are roasted a little bit more than others. And this doesn't look like very much tea, but it's actually a little rolled up tea. This is a tea that I've drunk a lot before and I really like, so I'm excited to share it with you. And one of the reasons I'm doing this tea today is because it's kind of a gloomy day, so I want to have tea in my favorite little fun teapot. And this is a tiny little kyusu from Tea Warehouse, and it's actually unglazed on the inside, so it soaks up the flavor of whatever tea you brew in it. So I've actually only brewed this honey oolong in this little teapot, so it's perfectly seasoned to get the best flavor out of this tea. So let's brew. So here, as usual, I have my tea things. I have my pocket pipe kyusu, a little matching teacup. This is only a little 2-ounce teapot, so I only need a little 2-ounce teacup. I have my high mountain oolong. This doesn't look like much, but this is actually 3 grams of tea, which is perfect for this tiny little teapot. And you'll see it'll unroll and become these beautiful big tea leaves. And then, of course, I also have my watch to time my tea. And again, my trusty electric kettle. So, first we have to put the tea into the little teapot. And then rolled oolongs like this, I like to steep a little bit longer for the first steeping, even when I'm using a lot of tea for the volume of water, because you need to give them a little chance to unroll. So I'm gonna fill this guy up. And then I'll time this for about 1.5 minutes. So we'll just start our watch there. And I'm gonna talk a little bit about this little teapot. So I mentioned that this teapot is unglazed in the inside, which means that the clay hasn't been sealed by the glaze, which is kind of a glassy substance. And the glaze is what prevents the tea from kind of seeping into the clay and letting its flavors get into the clay. So if you want to brew a lot of different kinds of teas, you usually want to go for a glazed teapot, glazed teaware. However, if you feel like playing around with seeing how this flavoring of the unglazed teaware affects the flavor of your tea, you can get an unglazed piece like this and then use the same kind of tea, at least the same category of tea, every time you brew with it. And you can see that the flavor will kind of evolve and it'll take on characteristics of this tea. So right now I've only used this honey oolong in this little teapot, so it's really taken on that flavor. In the future I may try it with other moderately oxidized oolongs or split roast oolongs like this one, but I probably wouldn't brew something like a delicate green tea. Okay, so now it's been about 1.5 minutes. And you can't get a good sense of the color from this dark green teacup, but it's a pretty light colored tea liquor right now for the first steeping. So let's give this a taste. So first, I'm gonna smell my tea leaves. They have this beautiful green and yet roasted characteristic that comes from the split roast processing. So they've got that creamy quality that oolongs can have, not like they've added any flavor to it, it just has this very creamy quality to it. It's a floral smell, but it's more of an orchid floral smell than something like a jasmine or a honeysuckle. Even though it's called honey oolong, I don't get a whole lot of honey on the first smell, actually. But I do get this very, very small note that I notice in a lot of really good oolongs. It almost smells like cannabis, which is kind of weird, but it's something that I really love in my oolongs. So let's give it a taste. Yeah, you get the honey a lot more as you taste it. It's got this almost sweetness on the back of your tongue. Now, tea without sugar in it to most people won't taste sweet, but as you get to know different teas, you'll notice the notes in them that taste like burnt sugar, that taste like honey, that taste like different fruits. Yeah, that is a lovely little first steeping of this tea. But I think because we have such a tiny cup of tea today, I'm going to show you a couple more steepings just to give you an idea of how I steep a tea throughout the day. So, I've finished my first cup of tea, and now I'm going to steep a second cup of tea. So, I already have the tea leaves in my teapot. I should say this water is really just shy of a boil. It should be between about 190 and 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm going to add a little bit more water to my teapot. And I'm going to steep this one for just 30 seconds. I actually like to make my second steeping a little bit shorter, particularly with rolled up tea leaves like this, because I find that the first steeping you need to give the tea a little bit of time to unroll, but on the second steeping it actually already has unrolled, so it's already going to give up some of its flavor a little bit faster. So it's been just about 30 seconds right there, and I'm going to go ahead and pour this out. Perfect amount of water there, just barely filled my cup. And I can already see that this is a little bit darker than the first steeping. So let's give it a taste. So I've got my very full, tiny little cup of tea here. Oh, I can smell more of the honey on this one. It's quite hot. I always forget how hot oolong tea can get after drinking green tea or white tea where you brew at a lower temperature. This is actually burning my fingers a little bit. Drinking tea out of Asian style cups with no handle is a bit of an exercise in patience, which speaks to the Zen meditator in me, which I don't meditate in the Zen style anymore, but it's still good to cultivate some patience with your tea. You'll enjoy it more. Yeah, this steeping, you're getting into the heavier roasted parts of the tea, and you're getting a little bit more of that smokiness almost. You can actually taste that sort of sweet herbal note of the cannabis, and you get a little bit more of the sweetness that goes along with that smokiness. There are actually flavor notes here that remind me a lot of good Scotch whiskey. I actually really like some of the smokier Scotch whiskies, and some of these smokier, heavier roasted oolongs or some of the other heavier teas actually remind me a lot of whiskey. Yeah, so the second steeping is a little bit different. It gives you a fuller, more interesting picture of the tea to steep it multiple times, and you get more cups of tea out of the same tea leaves. So I'm going to finish my cup of tea, and then let's take it for a third spin. And we're back for another steeping. Now for this third steeping, I want to give it a little bit longer than the second steeping because the leaves have released a lot of flavor at this point, and you kind of have to coax a little bit more out of it. So we will put some water in our little pot. And that second steeping was pretty strong, so I'm going to go ahead and only give this a minute, because I think that they've unrolled enough that they're starting to release more tea flavor, And I think that a minute will be enough to actually get an idea of how this flavor is going to evolve. So we'll let that steep for a minute. We'll listen to the birds singing and sometimes fighting. And I get to watch my cat sit here and look very wistful watching all the birds go by. But of course, it's not a good idea to let her come out here and get a hold of them. I wonder if she'd be able to catch one. And it's a kind of gloomy day today. But there's something about the little blanket of cloud and fog that almost makes even a busier morning seem a little bit quieter. I'm sure you can hear some of the road noises, but it just still feels like a little sanctuary of quiet in my backyard. So now it's been a minute. We'll pour the tea. This steeping is a really beautiful gold color. I don't know if you can see that, but I'll turn it to see if the light changes. That is really pretty. Let's give that a taste. So I've got my little cup of tea. It's got a beautiful golden color, and this has been steeped 3 times. So you can get so much out of these high quality teas. Oh, I get a little bit of fruit, something juicy, like a plum almost, with that honey flavor as well. Forgot to give it a smell. Yeah, you can smell cannabis and flowers, orchids, a little bit of vanilla and creaminess. And it just still tastes so lovely. I also want to show you something. Here, come on down. So, you remember that little tiny amount of tea that barely filled the bottom of this shot glass? After 3 steepings, it's steeped for about 3 minutes total, we now have a little teapot stuffed full of totally unrolled tea leaves. And we can pull one of these out and show you that these are indeed full 2-leaf and a bud Oolong tea leaves. They've started to unroll and they look really beautiful, and they start to just fill your teapot and give off all this beautiful tea flavor. And that's one of the reasons some of these teas can be steeped multiple times, because as they unroll, different flavors come out. So, thank you for joining me again for this morning cup of tea. I hope you enjoyed learning about this honey oolong. It's one of my favorite types of tea. I think that if you absolutely made me choose one kind of tea to drink for the rest of my life, it would be oolong. It would be a very difficult choice, but I think when it came down to it, I get so much enjoyment out of the variety of oolongs that I've had, and I think it really is one of my favorite types of tea. So, thank you again for joining me, and hopefully we'll do another one of these soon.